Hi, first graders. This week in Shared Reading, we are talking about retelling stories. And whenever we retell stories, there are 5 important things that we need to remember. The first thing we need to remember when we're retelling a story is the characters. We need to remember to talk about the characters. And characters, boys and girls, are the animals, the people, or the things that the story is about. The next thing we have to remember, boys and girls, is the setting. The setting is where the story takes place. So where does the story happen? Then we have to remember what happens at the beginning of our story, what happens at the middle of our story, and what happens at the end of our story. And boys and girls, when we're retelling, we can always include what our favorite part is. So today we're going to listen to the story Owen. And then we're going to practice retelling. The story Owen is written by Kevin Hankins. Owen had a fuzzy yellow blanket. He'd had it since he was a baby. He loved it with all his heart. Isn't he getting a little old to be carrying that thing around? Asked Mrs. Tweezers. Haven't you heard of the blanket fairy? Owen's parents hadn't. Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. That night, Owen's parents told Owen to put Fuzzy under his pillow. In the morning, Fuzzy would be gone, but the blanket fairy would leave an absolutely wonderful, positively perfect, especially terrific big boy gift in its place. Owen stuffed Fuzzy inside his pajama pants and went to sleep. No blanket fairy, said Owen in the morning. No kidding, said Owen's mother. No wonder, said Owen's father. Fuzzy's dirty, said Owen's mother. Fuzzy's torn and ratty, said Owen's father. No, said Owen. Fuzzy is perfect. And Fuzzy was. Fuzzy played Captain Plunger with Owen. Fuzzy helped Owen become invisible. And Fuzzy was essential when it came to nail clipping and haircuts and trips to the dentist. Can't be a baby forever, said Mrs. Tweezers. Haven't you heard of the vinegar trick? Owen's parents hadn't. Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. When Owen wasn't looking at his father, dipped Owen's favorite corner of Fuzzy into a jar of vinegar. Owen sniffed it and smelled it and sniffed it. Then he picked a new favorite corner. Then He rubbed the smelly corner all around his sandbox, buried it in the garden, and dug it up again. Good as new, said Owen. Fuzzy wasn't fuzzy anymore. But Owen didn't mind. He carried it and wore it and dragged it. He sucked it and hugged it and twisted it. What are we going to do? Asked Owen's mother. School is starting soon, said Owen's father. Can't bring a blanket to school, said Mrs. Tweezers. Haven't you heard of saying no? Owen's parents hadn't. Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. I have to bring Owen to school, or Fuzzy to school, said Owen. No, said Owen's mother. No, said Owen's father. Owen buried his face in Fuzzy. He started to cry and would not stop. Don't worry, said Owen's mother. It'll be all right, said Owen's father. And then suddenly, Owen's mother said, I have an idea. It was an absolutely, wonderfully, positively perfect, especially terrific idea. First, she snipped, and then she sewed. Then she snipped again, and she sewed some more. Snip, 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 sew. Dry your eyes, wipe your nose. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Now, Owen carries one of his not-so-fuzzy handkerchiefs with him wherever he goes. And Mrs. Tweezers doesn't say a thing. All right, guys. Let's practice retelling this story together. All right, what I want for you to do now is first, you're going to tell me who are the characters in our story, Owen. Tell me the characters. You're right. The characters in the story Owen are Owen, his parents, and Mrs. Tweezers. Very good. Okay, the setting of our story. Let's look at our next finger. The setting. Where does this story happen? Tell me now, where did this story Owen happen? You're right, it happened at Owen's house for the most part. There were a few different times where Owen went out to the dentist to get his hair cut, but it happened. The setting of the story is Owen's house and his yard. Now, boys and girls, I want you to tell me what happens in the beginning of the story. Tell me now. Great job, boys and girls. In the beginning of the story, Owen was outside with his favorite blanket, Fuzzy. And Mrs. Tweezers told Owen's parents that he was too old to have this blanket. And Mrs. Tweezers told Owen's parents about the blanket fairy trick. So Owen was supposed to put his blanket under his pillow, but he didn't. He shoved it in his pants, and the blanket fairy never came to get it. Then in the middle of the story, Owen still has his blanket, and Mrs. Tweezers tells his mom and dad about the vinegar trick. Because Mrs. Tweezers thinks Owen is too old to carry that blanket around everywhere. So Owen's mom and dad listen to Mrs. Tweezers, and they dip a corner of his blanket in the vinegar. And then, boys and girls, Owen buries it and makes it stinky again and doesn't care. Now, you guys tell me what happens at the end of the story. I just told you it happened at the beginning and the middle, so you guys tell me, after the vinegar trick, what happens at the end? You're right, boys and girls. At the end of the story, Owen is super upset because Mrs. Tweezers told Owen's parents to say no about Owen taking his blanket to school. They told Owen no, and Owen was very sad. So his mom got creative and cut Owen's blanket into a bunch of handkerchiefs. And Owen was happy, his mom and dad were happy, and Mrs. Tweezers never said anything about Owen and his handkerchiefs again. Awesome job retelling, boys and girls. Can't wait to see you tomorrow.